So one of the hazards of my job as a deacon is when your friends have your cell phone number and they call you a few days after such a gospel. I got a call last week from a close friend of mine commenting on last week's gospel, and he said it upset him. How is it that the 5 wise virgins would not share their oil with the 5 foolish ones? And he asked me, how is this Christ-like? I explained to him that it was a parable and that it was about being prepared. And what are parables? Parables are a story in a lesson within a story. And Jesus used these often to teach his disciples, along with today's gospel from Matthew. It is considered an apocalyptic literature. Apocalypse, translated from Greek, means to unveil. And it is this type of early Christian literature containing visions and revelations from God concerning the end of the present time and the advent of his kingdom coming, or Jesus' second coming. As we look closer in time and history, the Victorians were noted for their interest in all things related to death. They built great tombs for their heroes, and they cherished their loved ones through the possession of memento mori, personal items that once belonged to loved ones, such as a lock of hair or a favorite photograph. For them, death was a part of life, ubiquitous. What was important to them was what was left behind. In addition to ornate tombs, the Victorians loved grandiose epitaphs that recalled the posterity of the great achievements of the deceived heroes and national figures. As we come to the close of another liturgical year, our readings seem solemn and somber, challenging us to reflect on our own lives and to consider our own epitaphs. What will we leave behind, or what will others say about us? Will they say that we used our God-given talents well, that we did our part to improve that small piece of the world that we inhabit? Today's readings are meant to put such matters into focus. The gospel tells of 3 investors who invite us to identify with them, 2 who risked and gained, and 1, stricken by fear, made sure he did not lose and had little. Our initial reaction might be to side with the prudent guy, and why not? In today's world where the market can be so unpredictable, it makes sense to be cautious, especially when dealing with other people's money. Yet, it is what Jesus wants? No. Is there a lesson, perhaps, in his parable? Many people equate the word talent with a huge amount of money and miss the point of this parable. Instead, we should see it as referring to something of even more tremendous value, the gospel message, the good news. Because Matthew has chosen to place this parable ahead of the Last Judgment, we know that it speaks to us of success, of failure, and of judgment. Some scholars suggest the parable is really an accusation against the Pharisees for their spiritual timidity. They knew the promise of the good news and yet chose to bury it in their rules and regulations. On the other hand, Jesus exhorts his disciples to take risk, to dedicate their whole lives to the truth of the gospel, and if necessary, to risk all for the glory of God. That is the investment he's talking about. By first leading us to favor the timid servant, Jesus then masterfully turns the story upside down. The irony is that he loses everything, even the little he had been given. We need to take note of the fact that each is given according to his ability, and that when risked, the reward is a share in the master's joy. So what then is the moral of this parable? If we see it as an exhortation of work diligently and fearlessly for the return of Christ, then now is the time for us Catholics to invest and, if necessary, to risk all of our gifts, our resources, and most importantly, our faith, to share Christ with others and to bear the fruit of the dividends of that investment. To be brave, to, in a word, evangelize.